Hi everybody, Scott Yoder here with Ecommerce Marketing 360. We're talking to Senior Marketing Executive Bobby Schell, and we're just going to review some of the main ideas that you'll want to know about if you're looking into starting an e-commerce business and developing an e-commerce website. So Bobby, let's jump right in. Kind of a big question with this. Can anybody get into e-commerce? Can anybody do this?
I'd say yeah. I think anyone can do this. One of my first e-commerce clients, he was selling some products out of his garage, and now he's a multi-million-dollar business.
Really?
Yeah, I think with the right work ethic, e-commerce, you can definitely do it.
And why is that? What's making it easier nowadays?
Well, nowadays, compared to just, say like 10, 15 years ago, where you had to focus on inbound marketing that you could not quantify and actually figure out, like in terms of like ROI, how things are working, mailers, billboards, catalogs. Some of these words are even foreign at this point to me. But building an inbound strategy when you can just target people who are looking for a specific product, it's much more effective.
Okay,
we found that.
good.
Yeah.
So I think what a lot of times one of the things we've seen is that having a niche is important. You can't just go out and hope to sell shoes against Nike.
Yeah.
How do people develop that niche? How do they find that marketing space that allows them to be profitable?
Yeah. I think when it comes to determining that marketing space, one of the big factors is just remaining relevant in people's minds. And one powerful tool is retargeting. So whenever you're on e-commerce, there's a bubble almost with e-commerce where there's so much room and then there's so many competitors. So some of the things we do is we will focus on inbound paid ads, we'll focus on SEO as well as retargeting, bringing customers back that are familiar with your brand. But I'm sure something we'll talk about a little further into this just kind of meeting together.
Yeah, we will.
Email marketing and other areas.
And we'll come back to remarketing, but even to just stick with this a little bit more. In terms of the product niche, the importance of that and how you kind of feel that out. What have clients done that have helped? Like you mentioned, the guy with the garage. What kind of thing tends to be successful with this?
Yeah, I think the word niche is important, and I think a lot of times what it is people will try to stretch a little too far. So I had a gentleman once who sold anything in relation to wheels and tires. After the first year, we realized wheels was our best option.
Okay.
We started getting better supplier costs, and then that increased our margin. We were able to create more sales on wheels, where tires, the margin was a lot smaller, and it just wasn't profitable for us long term to go after that. But one thing we can do, and I think Apple does well, not to go on a rant, but they'll sell you a computer, right? And then they get you with the accessories and the other items that tie to that to make that experience better, like the phone or your charger, getting a new charger, your iPad. So for instance, a wheel client who's selling wheel products will then create email marketing campaigns with just crazy discounts on tires, which are typically more replaced more often. But also anything like thinking about the repeat purchases and thinking about the lifetime value of a customer is going to be your best option.
So there's still a lot of follow-up, obviously.
Yeah.
After you sold somebody the first, that's just the beginning of the journey.
That's the beginning of the relationship, yeah. And then from there we have a journey, a lot going on.
Okay, good. So talk a little bit about some of the platforms that exist. I know we work with BigCommerce, Shopify. There's a lot of options out there. Obviously, when it comes to e-commerce, Amazon is big, eBay. How can somebody getting into e-commerce kind of get a grasp on what the best tools are?
One of the biggest things I would say is, like you said, Shopify, BigCommerce, eBay, Amazon. Amazon's a big player, obviously. They've been making people millions for years. And the last couple of years, I've had a lot of e-commerce guys who have been literally buying homes, living their dream, come to a bit of a halt due to map pricing and distribution channels changing, things like that. So BigCommerce and Shopify are great options. Amazon becoming less of an option because you now are not leveraging your brand, you're leveraging Amazon. You don't have as much pull with your customer because they're relying on your Amazon store for those repeat purchases. It's all about repeat purchases and building that relationship with a customer. So BigCommerce and Shopify are great examples. There's also Magento and many others, but those are two common ones.
So with, for example, like a BigCommerce site, that's your website, that's your store. Unlike Amazon or eBay, you really have the most control over the sale, over the relationship.
Yeah. So with Amazon and eBay, retargeting is huge. certain percentage of customers aren't going to buy from you the first time. We've started to dial that into 90+% of customers. 9 out of 10 people are not going to buy from you. We're sensitive people, like we're looking for the best price. Am I getting free shipping? How quick is it getting here? Even with that being said. So people do rely on Amazon a lot, but with some of these tighter Amazon regulations, we're becoming more reliant on creating our own brand over the last few years, which you can do over your own website. And then with that being said, now you have retargeting lists, which you can't always leverage on Amazon and eBay. So now your people across the web, whenever they're on weather.com, pandora.com, they're seeing your brand and not seeing an Amazon ad, which builds a lot for your identity.
That's awesome. Is it complicated in terms of managing the inventory, the transactions, having it tied into a merchant account and the payment process? I know people who are just starting out with this are always looking, how do I get all of this to take place? How do these tools work? Is some of it automated? What do you guys do?
Yeah. In terms of automating that, BigCommerce has some awesome options. I mentioned a wheel client earlier, a gentleman who sells wheels, and he automates a lot through BigCommerce, where when he needs to fulfill an order or contact a customer, he has it automated to his email or to whatever platform he's using, so that's very helpful. Amazon and eBay obviously have that infrastructure, but in terms of building your own brand, which is most important at the end of the day, we have options just to allow you to scale that infrastructure of your own business so that you can do that successfully. Yeah.
Good. Talk a little bit, if you will, about how customers find these websites then. So you've got the underlying idea of search marketing. There's paid search, there's organic search. How do you guide clients into using those avenues the best?
Yeah. A good bit of search is done over Google. So we'll use Google Shopping, which is the most cost-effective option at the beginning, being able to set bids on Google Shopping. And if you're not familiar with Google Shopping, you type in pink shoes on Google, you're going to see 4 to 8 options in the top right of your web browser. That's Google Shopping. A lot of times the clicks there can be 50 to 200% cheaper. So you can really manage your cost, make your dollar stretch further to reach more customers, so that you can build this retargeting list, which follows users around the web, so you can show your advertisements to them when they leave your site. So it's a great way to build brand recognition and to get more visibility for yourself. Now, outside of the Google Shopping ads, one thing that supports that performance that's not very costly are text ads and the organic ranking. So optimizing your on-site experience, creating a better on-site experience for customers that retains them on your site and keeps them there longer. Google views that as incredibly positive. They'll actually rank you higher. And then now with this feedback we're getting, good site experience, we're creating an easier experience for our customers, right? Now it's easier for them to check out, and all of that correlates to just your success.
And so that's another thing where the niche comes in as well, right? If you have a little bit more of a niche market, you're able to optimize for those keywords and have a better chance to be found. Obviously, if you just have some general term, it's going to be much harder to rank for that type of thing.
Yeah, that is. So in terms of e-commerce, like if we're just talking about a product like wheels and tires, that's very broad. There's so many models. You might have a niche product that's just 12 less products, 20 or less products, where you only have so many options. With that, it can be challenging in terms of scaling as far as organic and e-commerce, because you don't have 2,000 options for Google to decipher. You only have these 12. So that's whenever we're talking about having less products, that's where optimization becomes a bit more important, because now you need to be more visible due to you having a lack of inventory. So there's different approaches for each one. We might dive in that later, but...
Kind of a segue into that, and simple question. Does someone with an e-commerce site need to blog? Do they need a blog? I'm selling tires. Do I need to blog about tires?
Yeah. I think blogging, social media, all these things that directly relate to that organic component is incredibly important, especially selling tires. Like for my guy who sells tires, like we're mostly tires and wheels. We're focusing on younger guys, typically in between the age of 25 and 45, and this is in one side in particular I'm talking about. But a lot of the times we're trying to target this group of people. So there's a certain voice we want to have, and our blogging makes us discoverable for that, and obviously connects with our customer so that we can reach their interest, what they're into, So I think it's very important to have a blogging, but also a social component tied to your niche business.
So that ties into interests, that ties into information. which then leads into selling ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
What about the importance of all of this being able to take place on my phone? The mobile part of the marketing.
Yeah, mobile is huge. We talked about in a previous video how mobile has exceeded desktop in terms of search in 10 different countries. So the mobile experience, number one, typically generates that interaction with a customer. We also talked before about a bounce rate where 90+% of customers do not close the first time. So one thing Google has identified in the last few years are called micro moments. And to make that more digestible just for us as people is, we always hear this joke about us being zombies, always on our phone, right? Well, we're always on our phones because we're always digesting these bits of information in any moment. You know, people are texting and driving. People are in the store looking at prices. We're at work on lunch break trying to figure out the best solution, say, for our family situation. So these micro moments that are happening throughout the day ultimately lead to that buying decision. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to be mobily optimized and to have a good mobile strategy. That way we're discoverable and then ultimately make the dollar from the customer and get them the best solution they need.
That is huge. I know an example of the micro moment that I've seen from Google is somebody's in their bathroom, they're drying their hair, all of a sudden their hairdryer goes on the fritz. What happens? They can immediately, right there and then, start shopping for a new hairdryer, start comparing hairdryers, start comparing prices. That's the kind of arena that you're in with e-commerce.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about website design, how that works in terms of kind of building trust and getting people to commit to a purchase. And then also we'll talk a little bit about some of the data that we look at to help improve performance on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, I've been on the web since I was a kid, so I'll kind of tap into what I see. Like I saw sites 20 years ago where they have Comic Sans, which is a very playful font, very childish font, versus nowadays where these more like sans serif fonts that are cleaner, easier to read, especially for, say, a more elderly eye on all these different devices. But one thing is looking professional right on that first interaction. We're talking about micro moments. These are what builds trust to bring people back. Mm-hmm. So I think having a good experience where it's easy to read no matter your age, it's easy to go through your site and find what you need with the correct call to actions and just guidance into what you're trying to find, right? So one thing we're responsible for is your landing page. That's ultimately whenever you click an ad or a page on the web, that's where you end up. We want that page to be quality. So that site experience is ultimately like your very first impression with a brand new just acquaintance or potential partner in business.
Good. So tools like Marketing 360, Google Analytics, they gather a lot of data on how people behave on your website. What are a few of the key things that you look at that you can recognize and then act on to help improve sales on an e-commerce website?
Yeah. So one of the big things people just tend to talk about is the bounce rate. Like when someone bounces. And I like to make the analogy of a basketball. You just throw a basketball on the ground, it's going to bounce back. So bounce rate has to do with how sticky is your website. You know, when someone hits your site, do they stick or do they just bounce away?
So bounce then is somebody goes on, they are only on one page on the site and they exit the site, right?
Yeah.
That's what a bounce is.
Yeah. What would create a bounce is you do not interact and click into another page. So you land on that page, you don't click anything, and then you just leave. You didn't find anything relative to your needs, so you left. So in terms of site experience, that's one of the biggest metrics. Next would be, you know, if we're moving past the bounce, obviously we've gotten that first interaction, right? So what's next important is how many pages deep are customers diving. So from there, we can start to see where people go. And then if they're falling off at that point, say they're engaging with 3+, 4+ pages, and they're still falling off, there's some issue to be solved in terms of are we getting people, are we that discoverable on site now that we have them? Are they finding what they need?
Good.
Yeah.
So obviously confusion is going to kill sales. What types of promotions, call to action, some of those short bits of content have you found really work well to encourage people to buy on an e-commerce site?
So with e-commerce, it's all dependent on the market. We've had customers where we can do the pop-up right when you enter the site and you can get a free coupon. That can be helpful. Some people it's annoying. It's all dependent on that business. Sometimes it's when you exit the site, you want to give them a coupon then to retain them. But also in terms of that, the retargeting, which is very effective, bringing customers back now that they're aware of your business. Those costs can be 2/3 less.
So if they leave, you haven't lost them.
Right.
You can still remarket to them so that they'll see your advertisements or your
Yeah.
offers. Do you recommend free shipping usually?
Is that a question, Scott?
Yeah.
If you don't have free shipping, people are going to ignore you. And this is one of the battles we face every day, because honestly, adding free shipping to the scope of a business can be hard. You have your prices defined, you have your shipping. So now whenever we add free shipping, a lot of times it is actually adjusting your cost and your shipping model to fit that in. That way you don't cannibalize your own sales, but the customer has this perceived value of free shipping. That's incredibly important.
Perceived value, yeah, that's a good way to put it, definitely. Talk a little bit about reviews, product reviews, and how those play a role in influencing buyers on e-commerce sites.
Oh, baby, good reviews. Oh my gosh, it's like, if you've ever been on a date, been on a blind date, you're obviously set up with a good review, right? That can help close the deal or not. But my whole theory is, one thing we'll do, especially for this wheel client I keep referring to, we use Top Rated Local, a third-party review source, to generate reviews, build trust, not only with people trying to scope out what we do, who might have a little deeper, they're nitpicky, right? Like some people do their research, some people buy immediately. When people do research, we want to do our due diligence up front to reflect the quality our brand does. We can do that. So the reviews are huge on site, but also, some folks, especially when your brand grows and you're getting 20, 30, 100,000 visitors a month, people are going to type in your brand name and the word reviews online. And whenever you're visible and you're showing there with these great experiences, people will then come directly back, buy from you, and that closes the deal. So that kind of reiterates it's never on the first interaction people are buying with you. They're doing price research and review research. It's huge.
And the platforms like BigCommerce and Shopify have tools to gather reviews and place reviews on the product pages as well, right? So that your previous customers who bought a particular product can write up a review, and then you can place it there to have a hopefully positive review that new buyers can see.
Yeah, absolutely. BigCommerce and Shopify have reviews on the products, and one thing that's important also are just overall brand reviews. So having reviews on the actual page is very impactful for that individual product sale. But a lot of times we'll find customers actually researching the brand name and looking for reviews on that. So that's why we also leverage Top Rated Local and the brand reviews at the same time.
Good. Can you talk just a little bit about the actual web design process, like here at Marketing 360? What are some of the initial steps? And how long does it take? People are often, wondering that. Just a little bit about how we develop e-commerce sites on the BigCommerce, Shopify, and other platforms.
Yeah. So we have about 10 to 12 different designs that we've utilized over the last 6 years or so, and they've been through many iterations of what's going to be best, right? Because we're always trying to work on what's best for the customer's experience. So one of the things we've done is we've created 8 to 10, 12 designs total that create the best user experience on site for e-commerce in terms of starting at the homepage, dialing into your product, and then lastly, you found the product you wanted, the cart, the checkout. An e-commerce website design typically is we have a site or a series of questions, and that leads us into how we're going to design the site, the logo, the colors. From there, it's about 10 to 15 business days total, so less than 3 weeks, and the site's typically live.
That's awesome. How much does it cost? How much does it cost to market an e-commerce website?
Yeah, we obviously want to put you in a plan that's going to make you successful. We don't want to give you too high of a budget or too low where it's just money lingering, not enough to make you successful. But minimum, 4 or 5 years ago, we could get someone started on a $500, $600 plan monthly just being invested into your business. In the last few years, people are spending more money realizing the value of the Google advertising driving inbound business.
And depending on the competition, I assume, as well.
Yeah. The competition is one of the biggest components that actually determine how much you need to invest. But yeah, over time, people are obviously investing more, so there's more competition, like you said. But ultimately, we want to do research on the competition, see what they're investing. That way, we can actually make you competitive in that space.
And how long does it take once everything gets set up? The marketing gets turned on. How long does it take before I can start seeing some sales and start making some money?
Yeah, sales can be pretty immediate. With paid ads, you can have them the same day. That's why we do set up Google Shopping, the text ads, all these components on the front page, but also that retargeting list. That will grow for as long as you set that list up for. We could build multiple lists for a year or for shorter amounts of time.
How long until it really kind of starts to peak, till all this comes together?
You know, I've had folks where within 1 month we have complete sales. A lot of that's dependent on the customer service. A lot of phone calls are happening nowadays on mobile. Sometimes it can take a month or two, but typically within 3 to 4 months you're getting really good results. And by month 6 is whenever everything's working. Say you have a brand new site, you've never done SEO. You know, what is SEO? SEO is starting to make a move, and now your paid ads are being much more effective, and they're actually collaboratively working to create more sales. I think the biggest thing is making sure you leverage every opportunity for your success, from paid ads, organic, to remarketing, to reviews, to just your social media presence. So I just encourage everyone to tack all of those with full force, and you will be successful. I can promise you that.
Thanks, everybody. I encourage you to browse our site, check out some of the tools on Ecommerce Marketing 360. You can see the platform, you can see some of the different search strategies and get a feel for how we can help you be successful. Bobby, last thing, to get that passion going, get the blood flowing, and really think about getting out there and being successful, what song would you recommend somebody jam to really get in the state of mind?
I would say Steppenwolf, Born to be Wild, because you got to be wild about what you're doing in order to be successful.
Great. That's embedded at the bottom of this page with a little bit more information. Thanks for watching.